Hello and welcome back to my channel. Bonjour et bienvenue sur ma chaîne. My name is Muriel and it's time for February's monthly reading wrap-up. In the month of February, I read 7 books. A bit less than in January, but it's because I'm still at the hospital and have had other things on my mind, so my reading has been slightly slower. First, I'll be mentioning the 4 graphic novels / comic books I read. I read them all throughout the month of February in chronological order. They were basically volumes 6, 7, 8, and 9 of Saga. Yes, I have finished the first arc, I believe, of Saga, and have learned that volume 10 should be coming out this year, so I'm very excited about that. You know the drill, I really can't say much about the series at this point. Suffice it to say that volume, was it 7 or 8? Oh damn, I can't remember. I think it was 8. Was pretty big punch to the gut, and then volume 9 was a massive punch to the gut, and I was like, fuck you, authors. I mean, not literally, of course. I mean, it's a compliment. What I'm saying is a compliment. I was like, no! Now I need volume 10. Like, what the hell? How can you do this to me? So, yeah, that's all I can really say about those. But now, then I'll be mentioning the 3 novels I read in the chronological order. So first, I read Ombria in Shadow by Patricia McKillip. I had read The Forgotten Beasts of Eld back in spring of 2020. I had really enjoyed it, so I wanted to check out something else by this author. Ombria in Shadow is the story of a city-state, Ombria, which has just recently lost its king, had a son who is underage, and so he is under the power and influence of some kind of relative, a shadowy figure who is basically a witch, a very nefarious figure, let's leave it at that. And there's also the king's mistress who is involved, the king's nephew, and then a witch who lives underground with an assistant / adopted daughter made of wax. Or is she? And all of these characters are involved in, well, basically ensuring that Ombria survives and just enmeshed in the fate of the city-state. It's hard to put into words in a precise manner, but there's something I would say quietly powerful about McKillip's work. I really, really enjoyed Ombria in Shadow. At first glance, it doesn't appear like much of anything, but I really enjoyed it, and I think I gave it an 8 out of 10. It's just a very solid, dark fairy tale, basically a tale of magic and wonder, with really good, for what it is, a fairly short novel, character development, and you care about the characters, and these little gems of strong emotionality, and just deep reflections on the human condition and human relationships. But it's very subtle. I mean, yeah, it's quietly powerful. It's magical, it's dark, but it's like, oh god, it's like someone, stroking your cheek with a feather or something. I know, it's a very weird image, but that's kind of what it reminds me of, I guess. I really enjoyed it, and I would be definitely open to reading something else by Patricia McKillip, because so far I've really loved what I read by her. Then I was supposed to read I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid, but my order was backlogged and actually just arrived this week, so I'll be reading it this month. So instead, I purchased another book from my yearly TBR, the book of the Unnamed Midwife by Elison, and it was brilliant, but word-friendly advice. Don't be a massive masochistic dumbass like I was and read this if you're not in a good place mentally, because it will tear a massive hole through your chest. Or at least it did mine. So the book of the Unnamed Midwife is a post-apocalyptic tale. Basically, a relatively undefined plague has killed most of the people on Earth. It was especially hard on women and pregnant women, and it basically made birthing impossible because it killed all newborns on arrival. It also means that there are a lot more men remaining than women, and the story is told from the point of view of a bisexual midwife. who is fairly feminist and tries to go around the country and give birth control for the women she encounters. So there's a pretty scathing commentary on men in the book, though it's not man-hating because there are nice, decent, humane male characters as well. But I mean, it shows what probably a lot of men would do in such a situation. And there's a lot of rape. There's a lot of violence in there, so, just so you're aware. And, it ripped me to shreds. I became very invested in the main character's story. I shed way too many tears over the ending and over several passages. I enjoy the fact that there's a bit of commentary on sexuality too, and desire, and how desire survives traumatic events. Some people might think it unnecessary and gratuitous, but I thought it fit in absolutely brilliantly, and I could entirely relate to the thoughts the main character had about sexuality, about her relationship to men and to women, because she's bisexual. So to me, it rang true, and it really added something to the story. I guess overall, it's a bit of a mix between what I imagined The Road to be, because I haven't actually read it, but I sort of know the general premise. The Handmaid's Tale, especially in the way the story is told. And I also got vibes from The Walking Dead, though obviously there weren't any zombies in this book. But the beginning is straight up ripping off of The Walking Dead, and more originally still, 28 Days Later. But I don't know, I kind of enjoyed that. It was like a nice little wink to those works of fiction. So yeah, a great book of post-apocalyptic fiction. Extremely dark, very moving, and yeah, don't read it if you're not doing well mental health-wise, because yeah, it ripped me to shreds. Also, quick note, apparently it's the beginning of a series. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to read the other books in the series, because I mean, that first one just was a massive punch to the gut, and I needed to change gears and read something else. And then over the last 2 weeks, yeah, I took my time with that one. But like I said, I'm still at the hospital, and I have not been doing well this past month, really, but let's not dwell on that. I read City of Saints and Madmen by none other than Jeff VanderMeer. The first book in his Ambergris trilogy, is it? Series, whatever. This was a book of weird/urban fantasy meta-fiction, and it was meta-fiction I enjoyed. Originally in my notes I had written down that it finally was a work of meta-fiction I enjoyed, but thinking back on it, I actually realized that Always Coming Home by Ursula K. Le Guin is actually technically metafiction, and I highly enjoyed that one. So I really enjoyed City of Saints and Madmen. It centers on this city called Ambergris, and you have different stories set in Ambergris. And then you have an appendix with various different bits of miscellany. You have a monograph on giant squid. You have texts from pamphlets destined to tourists to Ambergris, and generally the fiction in the first part of the book centers around genius/mad artists or visionaries. There's a missionary in there, there's a painter, a writer. There's also a story that involves a composer of operas. So just generally creative types or highly imaginative types who are brilliant at what they do, but they're also a bit unstable mentally, let's put it that way. And what's special about Ambergris as well is that it's got this weird festival called the Festival of Freshwater Squid, during which people commit horrific acts of violence, and there's this people called the Grey Caps who are human, perhaps, I'm not entirely sure actually, and their culture revolves around fungi. A myriad of mushrooms, just of all sizes, shapes and colours and effects. So squid and fungi feature prominently in this universe, which is something that really appeals to me as I'm very interested in mushrooms, and I've stated before that I'm a cephalopod fan, especially of squid. So yeah, it was right up my alley, and I have to note that it was absolutely brilliantly written, and beautifully written too. The Southern Reach is one of my favourite SFF trilogies of all time, but in here I felt like the writing was just on another level. It just a very high level. And yeah, it was brilliant writing, with also a bit of wordsmithing, like China Mieville does, or Nabokov did. Right now, I'm reading Shriek and Afterward, which is also set in Ambergris and is related to some of the stuff you read in City of Saints and Madmen, but that's a straight-up novel. And I will hopefully do a dual review for both of these books in the relatively near future. So those were all the books I read in the month of February. In March, like I just said, I am reading Shriek and Afterward, which is kind of a sequel to Ambergris. I guess you could technically read it as a standalone, but City of Saints and Madmen does provide a lot of context and background for Shriek and Afterward. After that, I'll be reading Small Gods by Sir Terry Pratchett. I've never read any Discworld, but I was informed that Small Gods is a great place to start, as it also works as a standalone, is a good introduction to, well, the Discworld universe. I'll also be reading, like I mentioned, I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid, which does seem to be very short. I think it's like 240 pages or something, so that'll go by fairly quickly. And then I'll be starting the first book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy, The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams, and we'll be reading the entire trilogy through the end of March and into April. I also hope to read a book of non-fiction, perhaps a graphic novel, though it'll kind of depend on my book purchasing. In the meantime, I hope you all have a lovely day, evening, or whichever time of day you prefer. I hope you're all taking good care of yourselves, and well, I shall see you in the next video. Bye-bye.